I'm Tom Vessel.
I'm Z Garcia.
And today we're taking a look at Catan Starfarers Duel, which is a reprint of Starship Catan.
Yeah,
which
like
was
a reworking kind of, yeah.
Which was a two-player version of Starfarers of Catan, which was a space version of Catan.
Yes.
So was a Catan, back when it
there's
came
also
out.
a printing in between Starship Catan and Catan Starfarers Duel called North Wind, which was a multiplayer version of Starship Catan, not with a Catan theme.
So here's the thing, if you...
It's clear.
We followed that whole little line there, and you, whatever your thoughts are on Catan will not affect your thoughts on this game at all. This
Not
is
really.
so far removed. The different steps. This was originally in the Cosmos two-player line. It's a two-player only game, although the Northwind was multiplayers.
Yep.
But anyway, we're going to talk about this. Here's a little bit of how it plays.
The players are going to be taking turns back and forth, going through a few different phases each round until somebody gets to 10 victory points and they win the entire thing. We begin with, let's say, this player here. They're going to roll this die. This die shows 6 faces, but I believe it's a production mistake, and you're supposed to only be rolling a D3. It's supposed to only give you a 1, a 2, or a 3. So I'll simply take whatever I roll and half that, rounding up, all right? So we begin by doing that. We roll a 1, great, it is a 1 then, and the players would both check if they produce on a 1. I indeed do produce on a 1 right here. I can make one of these batteries. So I would go to this dial and I would take this up to 1. I have a certain number of these I can hold, and there's technology that lets me hold more. This one, for example, which I began with face up, is going to let me hold 3 of each of these, where normally I can only have 2. With this done and both players checking if they can produce anything, then I am ready to go on a flight and explore one of these various quadrants in space. My engines, which begin like this, I have 2 engines, plus the number I rolled, a 1, a 2, or a 3, is going to let me, that denotes how many cards deep I can sort of travel into that sector. So I'm going to say this one right here. My opponent would then grab this deck, and they would reveal cards to me up to that number, my speed, or until I've taken 2 actions. I've interacted with 2 of these cards, all right? So they would take one, they would reveal it to me, I'll just have them facing me, and this is a planet on which I can make a transaction. I could spend 2 of these Astros, I believe they're called, and purchase this or the reverse. The arrow points both ways, so I could do that. Let's say I don't do it, I let it go, then I simply leave it alone and they show me another card. If I do interact with this, I'll make that transaction, then we will turn this card slightly sideways just to remember I've taken 1 action. Because again, when I take 2, even if I haven't used the entirety of my speed, I'm done. So I'm not doing that. The next one they show me is this card right here, and I can do 1 time, I can spend 3 for one of those resources there. So let's say I'm interested in that. I will spend those 3 Astros, and I am going to gain this resource right here. We'll put that sideways like so. Every one of these cards is 1 speed. I only get 1 more. And so here is the next one. I can interact with this card, same thing, or because it's a planet, actually, I could actually establish a trade route with that planet if I have one of these ships, which indeed I do. And it has a matching symbol right there. So I'm spending this, I'm taking the card, and I'm going to put it down here. And it is now something I can do on my turn as well. With that done, this deck is going to get shuffled. I'm done now, and reconstituted and put back on here. But it's now missing a card because I took one out. So we take one from this pile. We would both look at this card, or you can play with a variant where you don't look. And then we shuffle it and we put it back over here. I could now buy things. I could now make whatever transactions over here I want to. So for example, if I want to upgrade my boosters, I could do that. I could spend 2 batteries if I have them and get myself another one of these. Or level one of these up to a level 2 even. It's a little more expensive, but I could do that. I could do the same thing with these lasers at the front and purchase them. I could buy these ships, like the one I just spent, and purchase them. and add them here to my hangar bay, or I could level up one of these abilities. So for example, here I have one that lets me have up to 3 of the resources, like I said, and this one here, when I roll a 3, or either player, then I get some of that energy, and I'll track that right there. And the other ones will have their cost on the back and whatever it is they do. You can even level these up to a level 2, as long as you've built the level 1, then you could purchase the level 2 for them, all right? And you would just level that up, buy it and level it up. So now it would be my opponent. They do the same thing. They roll this. Maybe they roll and they get a 5, which again we're having, so it's a 3 really. We check what we produce. Great, I make that. They make something. Then they pick a place where they want to go and they start going through it. Various different things will happen at these locations. There are cards that you will learn. You will have to remember that they're in there for the transactions. So for example, this is 4 Astros for one of these resources here, which is very costly, but there's probably another card somewhere where you can maybe buy or sell this for 1. So ideally, you want to learn where that is. You can go there, buy it for 1, go back over here, hope to run across this, and sell it for 4. You could do that. And then there's also one final couple things I want to show you. There's these, where you can acquire these with the other kind of ship. And then you would take that card, same thing. This produces just like this starting card produces, but it's also worth a victory point right there. So that if I had that, I would have 1 victory point. These level 2s, by the way, are also a victory point. And then if you have some symbols, so say 3 friendship symbols, you'll gain this. That's a victory point, but it could be taken away if somebody has more than you. And the friendship symbols come from some of these cards right here. So you have to be mindful of that as well. Try to maintain that majority. And then there's also planets like Perseus here. Those, when they come up, sometimes missions will tie to them. So let's say instead of Perseus, it's Cassiopeia. If that comes up, and I have these resources, I could spend them in Cassiopeia, which I just came across, and then I would gain the card and gain the victory point, taking this for myself and replenishing that with a new card. Hey, look at that. It's Perseus. If I remembered that Perseus was in this deck, that'd be good for me. I could just prep, having those resources, go there, encounter Perseus, gain those goodies. And then lastly, let's take a look at pirates. There's no pirates in this deck here, but there will be pirates out there. And when your opponent grabs a pirate card, they don't automatically tell you what those pirates are. So it'll look something like this, and they draw it and look at it themselves, and then they tell you, okay, it's pirates. Do you want to pay them off, bribe them, or do you want to fight them? You have to decide that before you see the card. If you pay them off, you pay 3 Astros, they go on their way, and you keep going. You show the card, and then they continue. If you do fight them, then the card will be shown like so. They have an amount of lasers, so do you. You each roll, and whether you win or lose, then you're going to get some victory points, maybe some medals of bravery. If you get enough of those, you get the hero of the people there. Or you might lose something, just your turn ends or something like that, or you might actually lose something, give something up. When these go away, we also, again, add a new card into the deck so that these decks of cards always have 9 cards in them. That's the general flow of the game. Leveling things up, getting those victory points. Once you get to 10, you are the winner of the game.
Okay, so the components for this one, there's a lot. And this game does some weird things with the rule books on the back. They're like, hey, you don't like reading rules, use the app, whatever. But this jumping, they have this...
Well, they have the rule book, then they have the sort of like, learn to play across 5 games which aren't the full rules. So like the first one's like, just learn how to fly your spaceship. And it's like a 15-minute, don't worry about anything else other than like, counting your thrusters and flipping cards. Then step 2, we're going to add in, step 3, we'll put a new chunk of the board. They made this board sort of like puzzle pieces so that they could slowly teach you the game. But once you play the game, it doesn't matter. Now you've built the whole thing every time.
I don't know how I feel about that. It almost feels like they put too much effort into that.
I agree.
Maybe a tutorial game, but that many steps just felt like, come on.
I agree. On the one hand, it's like, okay, that's a nice idea for on-ramping people. Cute. On the other hand, now every time I play the real full game, the board is made up of 4 chunks for no good reason, and it'll never be different anymore. I'm of two minds about it also. I applaud the effort to show people a game in very sort of bite-sized pieces. You might have gone too bite-sized.
The game is... I'll say straight up, I like this game. But there are a few issues I have with it.
Yes.
One is, it feels... On the back of the box it says 75 minutes. That feels 15 to 20 minutes too long.
I agree. The game's too long for what it is. Boom. I'm marking things off my list.
I like that. I just wish that it was just a little shorter. It doesn't have to be short. I mean, just it's just a little... It feels like it goes on just 15 minutes longer, and I don't know how to fix that other than saying we'll do 9 points, 8 points, whatever.
Yeah.
Another thing is that this is going to affect you, whether you like it or not. How much do you like memory? Because memory is definitely an aspect of the game. What's in each deck? Now, this involves what I consider to be imperfect memory in a sense of I don't need to know every card in that deck. I'm just like, oh, I can sell iron for a lot of money in that deck. That's all I need to remember.
Yes.
Or whatever it is. That one planet to complete the mission, it's in that deck. So there's a little bit of memory, but if you hate memory in general, that's something to notice in this game.
Yeah, memory elements is something I put both in my positives and my negatives, actually. If you don't like memory, you will not like it. And here you have to do it for over an hour. That's going to bother you. However, I think memory as an element in a game is as well implemented as it can be in this game.
Yeah, I like
this idea of like, ooh, I'm exploring space. Oh no, where is that planet in space? Start sailing that way. Shh. Oh, we didn't find it. Doesn't mean it's not this way because you don't see the whole deck. It just means you didn't find it on this run. And that's neat. You can get into the theme a little bit. It's buying and selling and wheeling and dealing. And, oh no, I'm flying through space and pirates found me. It's about as well implemented in here as I would expect memory to be. So again, that's a positive and a negative for me.
And then my last minor negative is that I thought the setup and playing through a round felt like it was maybe one step too many, and or the setup, there's a lot of setup for what isn't really a big game.
Yeah, it's got a long setup.
Game.
The setup is a little long, yes, and I find it to be the whole thing kind of fiddly with the dials and the whatnot. I used to own Northwind, and this to me, from a sort of managing everything point of view, feels like a step back. I'm not a big fan of the dials. I like the idea of it all right, but I'd rather just have a bunch of goodies and I put them on my ship.
Now, the original one had cards that you just rotated around.
It did, and then Northwind had actual wooden bits and you'd set them into your ship. Way overproduced. But it was a nice looking, bunch of bits. In this one, the dials, taking them up, taking them down, having to manage everything. The cards and sort of turning them sideways if you did it, and the whole thing, the setup of it, the management of it, feels a little fiddly to me.
Other than that, I like it, but you had some more negatives?
I do. There's a couple of production mistakes in it, which are unfortunate. The D6 is supposed to be a D3.
That's right, I forgot
and they
about
messed that up.
I think they'll replace it for you.
Yeah, I guess they will replace it for you. It's also because they're trying to shove this learn how to play thing in there, and then that's supposed to sort of like see its way out. There's extra bits and cards, and I already mentioned the board kind of being split up, but there's things in it you won't need again, I suppose, unless you want to play it, and teach someone else with this on-ramp, that just sort of get in the way. Oh, shuffle cards 1 through 15. But there's a 4A and a 6A. Do not mix them in. Don't make that mistake. They have identical backs, so, be careful with that. And there's a few things like that I just kind of found annoying. The production mistakes, the long setup. As far as good things, I like the sense of exploration in this game, which
really
I've already
fun.
talked about. I do like that idea of, it does kind of feel like traveling through space, and your opponent will be involved in that because you go, okay, well, I'm going to go through deck 2 over there. Okay, great. And they grab the deck and they look at it. If it's a pirate, they have to tell you, it's a pirate. You want to fight or you want to pay him off? If not, then they'll play the card for you. They keep track of how many actions you've taken. That's nice that the other person has something to do on your turn because your turn's kind of long in this game. And if not, if you were just kind of managing your own deck of cards, there really would be nothing to do. So I'm glad there is an action that is a 2-step process. You don't get to see it yet until you decide if you might be able to take on these pirates. I enjoy that action. The whole game, I think, shows its age, though, in just how long everything takes and how kind of procedural the whole thing is. But if I look at it through that lens of this is a classic from literally 20 years ago, brought back with a little tweaking, then the rose-tinted glasses help a little bit for me.
Well, another thing I really like, I like the exploration, like you said. I also like the different upgrades, whether they're the guns or the boosters or just the upgrades on the ship. And I felt like they're all cool and you want them all. So there's not like an upgrade that's obviously better.
I agree.
And one of the cool features of this game is that makes it a little cutthroat in a sense, just a bit, is that only one person can upgrade to the top level.
Yeah.
So if I can hold 4 goods in my thing, you can't. Which at first you're like, oh man. But also those double lever upgrades aren't that amazing. So that if you get it and I don't, I'm like, well, I've lost now.
They're also worth a point, which is nice. I'm glad that you got a victory point from that.
And you can't get all of them.
You can't get all of them.
Because I'll get some of the other ones. You just can't get everything.
Yeah, you do have to pick and choose what you want to do, and it does feel good each time you play that you can go for a different thing. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to throw a bunch of my resources into my thrusters, and I can look at a whole bunch of cards in this game. Maybe not. Maybe you go for something completely different right off the bat. I like that. And you're distinct right away also. You can pick a couple of starting equipment that begin face up. So it's not that you begin the same and can get to that. You begin with a couple of things already. I like that.
What would you give it?
I'm coming down at a 6 on this one. Like I said, I think it's a neat game, but it shows its age. It's too long for me. That memory element really is ever present. It's a big part of the game. And I think a big chunk of what you think of this game comes down to how you feel about that. If it was half as long, I'm going to be more, I'm dropping a bigger hammer on it than you were saying. It's like too long by about 15 minutes or 10 or so. I think it's just too long. I want to chop it down the middle. If it was half as long, I think the memory aspect would feel like a bigger positive for me than it does right now. But as it is, I'm giving it a 6. I enjoy it. You want to throw down with this game, I'm happy to take a walk down memory lane with you, but it's not one that would jump off my shelf right now.
I like it more than you do. I'm going to give it a 7. I probably would have given it an 8 or 9 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I liked it a ton. The components issues drop it a bit for me.
Sure.
And like I said, it's a little too long, and the component issues are a thing. That whole learning thing, I think, is almost detrimental to the game to me. To some degree.
Right.
But I still like the memory bit of it because I don't have to sit there and be like, oh, where is everything? And even if I do forget, it's kind of like part of the game. I'm like, oh, that's the wrong place. But hey, I found something else that was interesting.
Yeah.
And I also like that the cards change. It's a little fiddly to do it, but the cards change, so there's always new stuff in each of the quadrants.
That's a cool idea.
So the whole thing is fun. It's a nice, enjoyable 2-player thing. This is one of those where I'm like, watch the review. Does this look interesting for you? Then you might enjoy it.
Yeah.
If you're like, if any part of it you sit there and go, I don't know if I like that, then get a different game. Mm-hmm. But for those of you who like the original, this is pretty faithful reproduction of it. They changed how it looks and everything, but it plays pretty close to the same.
Right, it has the same soul.
And it's fairly unique. There's very few games like this, actually.
Yeah.
I think I actually prefer this still to the 2-player Catan card game.
Yeah.
Whatever that is called at any given point in time.
Yes.
Rivals of Catan or whatever it is. So
I agree.
there you go. It's Catan Starfarers Duel. I'm Tom Bassel.
I'm Z Garcia.
See you next time.
Explore the stars.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing?
check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.